D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. We hope you are having a wonderful start to your Tuesday. Derek Mason is back. He survived the wilderness.
Yes.
Any man versus wild Bear Grylls situations when you were out there?
Nah. Just encountered an insect or two, but that's about it.
No bears?
Man versus insect. And know who won?
The insect.
Insect. Because man moved over. Ain't nothing wrong with that. I ain't afraid to say that.
Some insects,
even though I kind of, shooshed away a few of them that was in the cabin. But yeah, it was fun.
I had a good time. I remember several years ago, my wife and I went to visit her sister when her sister was working on Little St. Simon's Island, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And before we got there, my sister-in-law was like, you're going to probably want to wear like mosquito equipment. So there I was with one of those nets over my face, long sleeves, pants. It's 95 degrees outside. Hated it. I'm an inside boy.
I don't blame you. I like the outside. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy a nice afternoon, 85 degrees, light breeze, even when it's a little warmer than that, and sitting out on the back patio. I love it, but I'm not a big insect fan. But I haven't gotten to the point where I'm paralyzed by it and I don't go outside at all. I still enjoy myself. But when it comes to certain insects, man.
Camping is my nightmare.
You don't like, I've been camping before. My son and I did it when he was little.
How about glamping? I'll do some glamping.
What's glamping?
Glamping is cool. Glamping was like what we did sort of kind of this weekend. That was sort of a glamping. It's more up style.
It's upscale camping.
You're in the woods, but you're camping. Like in a nice place.
Yeah.
A nice cabin.
It's
glamping.
It's just,
I don't know if I've heard.
It's really, you have all the have the woods,
it's
but then
glamorous camping. Glamping.
Gotcha.
Willie, you would love
essentials.
Glamping.
Yeah,
Willie, you seem like a big glamping.
I think I would be more of a glamping.
They got the toilet, you got air conditioning, you got TV.
Talk to me.
You got a bed inside. That's glamping, man. That's glamping.
Yeah, the tent and building the tent and the fire. I wouldn't be leading.
That.
I would not be
cool,
leading
though.
the team on that. I'd be a secondary guy.
I'll tell you what my actual nightmare is: camping at Bonnaroo. I know some of you love that idea.
Ooh.
No way, no how.
I've always wanted to do that one time because I've never been.
Zero interest. Absolutely zero interest in camping at Bonnaroo. The show has already started. It's 3:04. And I have two texts to read. Ryan in Florida. Adam, are you going to say sorry to all the Predators fans for jinxing them yesterday, LOL?
Yes.
Scott from Shelbyville.
I said it to him before.
Scott from Shelbyville says, look, it's Adam the Jinx Vingan who jinxed the Preds but doesn't believe in jinxes.
Yeah. You and Brooks Bratton, I'm telling you, that you guys did some damage.
All right, look.
I'm not happy about that.
It's not my fault
my goodness.
for mentioning that the Predators had defeated the Sharks 15 consecutive
Why you have to
times.
mention
But it's the way you said it.
Yeah.
It's the way you said it.
Okay.
There's no such thing as a jinx. 15 times in a row.
Jinxing is not a real
thing.
No matter how many times he's seen it.
D-Mace,
in action.
Coach Willie was just biting his tongue.
Absolutely.
Yes, he was.
Why is he doing this?
We will get to the
Sure enough.
Predators. We will get to the Predators, who unfortunately were eliminated from playoff contention last night, losing to the Sharks. Sorry, I guess. And then the LA Kings defeated the Seattle Kraken, clinching a playoff spot for the Kings. So the Predators, unfortunately, will miss the playoffs. We will get into that very, very soon. But there was some breaking news right before we came on air. The biggest story in the NFL. It has absolutely nothing to do with the NFL draft, which is a week and a half away. The story that has... what's the word I'm looking for? It's people are obsessed.
Captivated.
Thank you.
There we go.
The story that has captivated the sporting world. Diana Russini and Mike Vrabel. Right before we came on the air, the AP reported that Diana Russini has resigned from The Athletic after the New York Post published those photos of her with Mike Vrabel last week. The Associated Press obtained a letter from Rossini sent to the Athletics executive editor, Steven Ginsburg. And here is what that letter said. Quote, I have covered the NFL with professionalism and dedication throughout my career, and I stand behind every story I have ever published. When the page 6 item first appeared, the Athletic supported me unequivocally, expressed confidence in my work, and pride in my journalism. For that, I am grateful. In the days that followed, unfortunately, commentators and various media have engaged in self-feeding speculation that is simply unmoored from the facts. Moreover, this media frenzy is hurtling forward without regard for the review process the Athletic is trying to complete. It continues to escalate, fueled by repeated leaks, and I have no interest in submitting to a public inquiry that has already caused far more damage than I am willing to accept. Rather than allowing this to continue, I have decided to step aside now. Before my current contract expires on June 30th, I do so not because I accept the narrative that has been constructed around this episode, but because I refuse to lend it further oxygen or to let it define me or my career, end quote. That is Diana Rossini resigning from the Athletic.
First, nobody feels sorry for you. She's presenting it presenting this as a, oh, I don't want people to, so I'm gonna kind of step away. No, your ass shouldn't have been doing what you were doing. That's what is causing you to step away. But beside that, that's the only thing that I kind of push back on Diana with. Is she wants to make herself look like the victim here when she's not the victim. Okay, at all. By no means is she the victim. That's the only reason I push back on that situation. But here's the bigger problem, because I do believe that maybe she didn't want to step aside. I think this was above her, and I think it was above the execs at Athletic. I think it was her husband saying, you got to get out of this. I think it was her husband that had somebody probably more than likely following her with her alleged, marital affair, supposedly. This was, to me, and this is what I don't think she thought about when she decided to take this picture. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. Is that you are playing under different rules than Mike Vrabel is. Total different rules. And it's not fair. No way, no how. But you're seen as someone that's potentially wrecking a marriage. People are going to get on you first. They're going to be quick to dismiss you first. They're going to be quick to push you aside first. All the while, the other party declines to do interviews, and he's going about his business. It's all football, folks. No one's going to press him. No one's going to say anything to him. It was, he was just no, it was wrong. Regardless of how you cut it, slice it. It was wrong. As I get older, you start to figure out, man, this is just like, listen, everybody has their issues within their marriage. I get it, relationships. But you have to think long and hard in a situation like this, because she ends up being the person that is losing just about everything. She's lost potentially her professional respect amongst people in the business. She had to leave her job earlier than what she probably thought about. And then she has to fix whatever's going on at home. All the while, the guy on the other side that was 50% a part of this, he gets to go on with his job. Yes, he has to deal with some things at home, but his wife, more than like, they go to counseling. And I hope that they are able to survive all of this, because I really do. But the repercussions for him is nowhere near what it is for her. And we're seeing it playing out in real time.
I do have a question for you, Derek. Imagine for a moment that you are a member of the New England Patriots. Mm-hmm. And what is one thing that Mike Vrabel always liked to say when he was here? Don't do dumb bleep to hurt the team.
Absolutely.
If Mike Vrabel were to say that to you now, assuming you are, in this hypothetical, a member of the New England Patriots, how do you handle that? How do you process that? Okay, imagine if Mike Vrabel said that to you as a member of the New England Patriots after all of this. How does that go
I think
over?
it goes out of
one a year, one out, 1 year.
I think from
in
the
one and out the other, or whatever
messenger,
it is.
the messenger is flawed. The messenger is flawed completely. The message has to come from someone else now. It does. I'm not saying that Vrabel's not going to be a good coach, and I'm not even saying they're fine. I'm just saying when he talk, he needs to let somebody else say that. He does until, further notice. He needs to let somebody else handle that part of don't do to hurt the team. Whether this hurts the team or not, I don't know. But what it is doing is shining a light, not necessarily on him, but what happens when the playing grounds are not even. This is what happens. One person, and this is probably the best thing for her and her husband's relationship, was for her to walk away. But Vrabel he doesn't, right as we sit right now, he doesn't have to deal with that. And that is completely, utterly unfair. And if anyone says it's not, you don't know what you're talking about.
I'm curious, from Vrabel's end of it, now does he get questioned about his side of the story? His side of the story has been, there's nothing to this. This is just two friends hanging out. There were other friends hanging out. That was her story to begin with. So why did she resign? Did she resign because if that's her story, and this is all just speculation and everything like that, then she shouldn't be resigning. I think if the truth is what you say it is, then you double down, triple down on that and say, yeah, we're just friends. Prove that the people were there. But so if this doesn't jive, and that's why this is going down this road with Rossini, then Vrabel's probably got some questions to answer somewhere in there, right? Because his story was, there's nothing to this. This doesn't deserve the time of day.
But who's going to ask them questions?
Well, I mean, this is the New England media. I would have to think there's a few people that are curious about that up there. It's a pretty high profile job.
But you know Vrabel, he ain't going to answer him.
No, he's probably not, but he's better be ready.
Yes.
For the question.
So I believe yesterday the Patriots held their pre-draft news conference. Vrabel did not attend, although it was also reported that when this news conference was scheduled, it was before the photos leaked, and he wasn't supposed to be a part of it initially, if I recall correctly, because it gave off the impression that he's hiding. This was the first opportunity for Patriots reporters to ask him questions about this, and he no-showed. But if I recall the reporting correctly, he was never supposed to be a part of this news conference. I believe the news alert went out like a month ago that this was going to happen, and Elliot Wolf was going to be the person answering the questions. But look, it's clearly a double standard. Diana Rossini's, I'm not going to go as far as to say that her career is over, because people do eventually reemerge. I mean, not a perfect comparison, but look at John Gruden, for example. John Gruden went away for a minute, came back. He's all over Barstool. He's doing the quarterback room again with all of the top quarterback prospects in the draft. So this isn't to say that,
but he's a guy.
And he did pay a significant penalty. He went away for 4 or 5 years.
Right. And Diana Rossini may not be able to afford
let's just
to go away.
Let's call it what it is.
Years.
He is a guy.
Yes. It is absolutely a double standard. If Diana Rossini wants to work as an NFL insider again, she's probably going to have a really hard time doing it, or she's probably going to have to strike out on her own, start a Substack or something like that. I can't imagine a brand name media company is going to hire her.
Not right
unless
now.
you consider Barstool Sports in that realm, and Barstool Sports is incredibly successful. I just don't consider Barstool Sports the same as I do ESPN, for example, in terms of its reputation. So, look, I understand why she made this decision. She's being skewered in the news. and she feels it's best for her personally and professionally to step aside. But to Willie's point, I am very fascinated to see what happens when Mike Vrabel is forced to address reporters for the first time. I assume that will happen next week after the first round of the draft at some point. So he will have to answer for this. And he may go up there and say, I stand by my statement to the New York Post, and I'm not answering any other questions.
Okay, so from a ESPN won't touch it. So when the draft is going on, they're not touching that. Nobody's going to touch it. It may be someone after it's all over with in the scrum that presents that question to Vrabel, but I don't think anyone from ESPN or whoever's running the draft, they're gonna try to stay as far away from that as they possibly and humanly can.
No, I can't imagine a scenario where if Vrabel goes on ESPN's NFL draft coverage, if he goes on the Pat McAfee show, I can't imagine someone asking him about that.
Yes.
But the reporters who are on the ground in Boston, who cover the team every day, I'm sure some news reporters who aren't sports focused will also be there to ask questions because, look, from a journalistic point of view, it's up to the people around Mike Vrabel to ask these tough questions, but sometimes you want a little bit of a buffer. If you get the news person there to ask the question, it may not deteriorate your relationship with Mike Vrabel if you're a Patriots beat person and you've got to be around him every day throughout football season. But I do imagine the first time Vrabel addresses reporters locally, this is going to be the topic. It's going to be asked many different ways to attempt to get him to answer. I imagine he's going to pull a Belichick and mutter something and not really answer the question, but you got to get on the record.
Right. Hold on. And I'm just thinking about this, and I'm sorry for cutting you guys
Bill
off.
Belichick?
No, Bill Belichick, but then the owner, he has his own sort of history.
Yep.
So it's just like, okay.
Yes,
so
it's something in the water in New England, I guess.
It's the Patriot way, guys.
It's the Patriot way.
Now,
there we go.
Patriot way.
That was the page that was ripped out of the Patriot way and shredded and set aflame.
No one talks about it anymore.
It was only given to certain people. That's what it was.
Why is this whole chapter missing of the Patriot way?
It goes from 356 to 490. A whole chapter is taken out.
But one last point from Rossini's side of this. Don't you find the statement pretty fascinating? What strikes me about that is she more or less is sticking to the story and basically saying, I'm resigning because of the residual piling on speculation and rumor, which she basically implies is not true.
Yes.
But I'm with you. If it's not true, you can say whatever you want to say. Yeah. I know it's not true. He know it's not true. We could put together evidence showing you that ain't true. So why am I quitting?
Yeah. So I don't see the strategy there.
Here's part of that statement again, as obtained by the AP. Quote, this media frenzy is hurtling forward without regard for the review process the Athletic is trying to complete. It continues to escalate, fueled by repeated leaks, and I have no interest in submitting to a public inquiry that has already caused far more damage than I am willing to accept. Rather than allowing this to continue, I have decided to step aside now before my current contract expires on June 30th. I do so not because I accept the narrative that has been constructed around this episode, but because I refuse to lend it further oxygen or to let it define me or my career.
That
doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. So she thinks by stepping away, it's just all going to go away. Not. It makes it look even worse.
But
now.
You know how the news cycle works. Eventually, something else is going to happen, and she will fade into the background. If she reemerges at some point, she's going to have to answer all of these questions.
But what I'm saying, I'm like, Willie, if you did nothing, then I just you could say whatever you want to say. I know I didn't do anything. It's going to die down. Something else will happen, and we'll move on. That's my thought.
John on the text line says, I miss when Adam used to get in trouble with his wife and children on the radio instead of jinxing our hometown hockey team. John, to be clear, I still get in trouble with my wife and children on the radio, but I did not jinx anybody. 615-737-1025. We will take your thoughts on the breaking news that Diana Rossini has resigned from The Athletic following the photos that were published in the New York Post with Mike Vrabel last week. We'll take your thoughts on that. 615-737-1025. But coming up next, the Predators have been eliminated from playoff contention following their loss last night to the Sharks. What's next for the local professional hockey team? There are a lot of questions. We will attempt to start answering them coming up next. 615-737-1025. Preds fans, speaking of which, tonight is the final Smashville Live of the season. 1025 The Game will be broadcasting live from Brewhouse South in Cool Springs right after our program at 6 p.m. Meet your favorite Predators players up close and personal. You can also get autographs and pictures. Tonight's guests will be Fedor Svechkov and Joachim Kemmel. That's Smashville Live tonight. Brewhouse South in Cool Springs at 6 p.m. It's presented by Gary Force Acura and only on 1025 The Game. She just posted the letter.
Hey, this is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a goal or a resolution at the beginning of the year to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. But I got some good news, because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
you guys just talked about, the push to get back in this year, and just you got this one in game 81. Just how do you kind of sum up the disappointment you're feeling right now?
I don't know. I'm still pretty emotional right now about everything. It was right there for us, but yeah, I know. I don't know what to think. It's just it's just disappointing. 'Cause I don't want to jinx it.
That was Ryan O'Reilly following the Predators' 3-2 loss to the San Jose Sharks last night. The Predators do have one more game on Thursday against Anaheim. And by the way, we do have tickets to give away to that game. So be listening for your cue to call during the program, 615-737-1025. But although there is one game left to play this season, the Predators were eliminated from playoff contention last night. The combination of the regulation loss to the Sharks plus the Kings' regulation win in Seattle eliminated the Predators. They'll miss the playoffs for the third time in 4 years. And you can hear it in Ryan O'Reilly's voice. If you saw his scrum after the game, clearly emotional. Willie, I could hear it in your voice last night at the end of the game. And there are a lot of questions that will need to be asked and answered by the new GM, whoever that is. And we will attempt to answer those questions ourselves, starting today, but of course, over the course of the off season. But I do want to say this right off the bat. The Predators should be commended for how valiantly they fought to make this game in the final week of the regular season meaningful, because the week of Thanksgiving, this team looked dead in the water. And at that time, I thought we were headed for a repeat of last season. So we'll talk about the future. I have my thoughts about it. Willie and Derek do as well. But I do want to say this right off the bat, Willie. These players should be commended for battling as hard as they did to dig themselves out of the hole they dug for themselves in the first quarter of the season. And they fall short, but you could tell last night just how gutted they were that game did not go the other way.
Yeah, I think you said it well. It was a game that stung, because you were hoping they could get to that last game with a chance. And we don't even know if that would have happened. They still would have needed some help, even if they had won last night. But what I would hope is that down the road, there is a reward for this journey and not just bailing and tanking. And that remains to be seen, because I know the argument is still out there that you need to sink to the bottom to get the high pick, etc. But just watching Steven Stamkos and Ryan O'Reilly and Roman Josi and Philip Forsberg and those guys who could have ditched, especially Stamkos and O'Reilly, right? They haven't been here as long. They easily could have sent a message, hey, move me on to somebody that's about to win. I want to hitch my wagon to those guys. But they dug in even further. And I would hope that there is a value down the road residually for playing alongside of those guys, especially for the young guys, because really that's the key to this whole thing for the big picture is the 6 rookies that are on the roster and then the 4 other guys who are not rookies but are 24 and under. And that doesn't even count Justus Annunen, who's 26, which is pretty young for a goalie. You can start to see the picture coming into focus on what Barry Trotz has been talking about, the next nucleus that they have been working for the last 2 or 3 years to develop behind the scenes. I'm hoping that the value is that will advance the development of that young core.
Here is the question that we are going to answer today, and I want y'all's reaction as well. 615-737-1025. How confident are you in the future of the Predators after this season? Are you feeling optimistic? Are you feeling neutral? Are you feeling pessimistic? 615-737-1025. I don't mean to speak for Willie, but I would assume Willie's answer is he's feeling optimistic. And he mentioned it there. Part of the reasons why I think he does feel optimistic is because the Predators have a solid foundation of young players. Friend of the show, Scott Wheeler of the Athletic, gave the Predators in his rankings the 5th best prospect pool in the NHL. Wheeler also came out with a story this week of his top 100 drafted NHL prospects. The Predators had 9 players on that list, which is the most in the NHL. So you've got a solid foundation of young players. You saw multiple rookies play meaningful games. There were 5 rookies in the lineup last night for the Predators. Matthew Wood, Joakim Kemmel, Reed Schaefer, Adam Wilsby, Ryan Ufko. The team had one of the younger rosters post-trade deadline in the NHL. So if you're feeling optimistic, I'm sure that's something that you are pointing to, that Barry Trotz did not mortgage the future. I know that he did not trade Eric Hall at the deadline. I didn't like it at the time, but the team has all the draft picks. Barry Trotz did not mortgage any major future assets to acquire Steven Stamkos or Brady Shea or Jonathan Marchessault. So the new GM has all of those assets to play with. Before I give my answer to this question, Derek, I want your answer to this question. Based on what you saw this season from the Predators, are you feeling optimistic about the future? Are you feeling neutral about the future? Are you feeling pessimistic about the future? Are you somewhere in between? Where are you on
I think I'm more neutral from this respect. One, they got to get a new GM. So we don't know how that's going to look. And then will the GM retain the coach? That's another thing. So that's kind of, though you have 2 question marks already. The GM, and then is the new GM going to keep the old coach? So you set those aside, but those are question marks, big, huge question marks. But I look at it from this standpoint. Roman Josi missed 13 games. So you assume he's going to be back fully healthy next season. Stamkos showed that he still got it. Forsberg shows that he still got it. O'Reilly obviously still has it. They have enough veterans that still has some years left in them, that if these young guys continue to develop the way they hope they do, then my sort of in the middle sort of, gets moved forward toward I'm optimistic more so because of these veteran guys that you have that are still playing well, and these young guys that have shown that they are developing. Again, the 2 questions is the GM and the head coach. You got Houston Onanen, who's playing well in net. So you figure we got us a backup goalie, if anything. So you have things within your team that you should be, happy about, should be optimistic about. But obviously, I'm not looking so much of the draft picks or how many draft picks they had, because those guys, unless you're getting, and we've already established, unless you're getting a top 2 or 3 pick, those guys are not playing for you for a while, unless there's an outlier out there. Yes, they have all those picks, but all those picks at this point means nothing unless they're going to get like a veteran player that's going to help them. But I just look at the guys they have on the roster now. If I had to lean one way or the other, I'm more optimistic, but then a lot of that optimism, could be sort of curtailed by who they hire as GM. And then if they keep Andrew Burnett or if they move on from him.
And that's a big part of it. One texter says neutral until the GM says what the plan is. I think that's a reasonable answer. This hire is massive. And I am going to be fascinated by what the new GM decides to do with this roster, because the new GM could decide, hey, I've got a solid foundation of young players. I've got veteran players who are still productive. Maybe we're not that far off. But the GM could also say, my top scorers are all in their early to mid 30s. And this prospect pool, which is highly touted, is missing that superstar caliber prospect who can put us over the top. Maybe we've got to take a step back. So I agree with the texter. I mean, the GM hire is massive. Sonny on our text line says maybe a bit of a hot take here, but I think this is the best case scenario. Young players got to play some meaningful games down the stretch, not playoff games, but meaningful, and showed some improvement, and the Predators still get a lottery pick. One texter, George, says, hard to benchmark relative optimism when we have no idea who the next GM will be. The foundation is solid, but the results of the season are as a body of work portends, good word, that they waited too long for the youth movement. Not selling more at the deadline for this stings, especially today. One texter says, optimism, ? I didn't renew my season tickets after 8 years. Another texter, Wes in Hermitage, says, good afternoon, Adam. That question is super tough to answer. It's hard to know what to think about the future until Trotz and coach are both gone and the new regime come in. Right now, I'm not feeling very good. Feels like I've watched the same season 3 out of 4 years over and over again. Something really needs to change. But with no playoffs and 3 out of 4 years, this city could very easily lose interest in this team. It's boom or bust in Nashville with the Preds. We'll continue to take some of your reaction. 615-737-1025. Here's the question. How confident are you feeling in the future of the Predators following this season? The Predators, since around Thanksgiving, were basically a top 10 team in the NHL by points percentage. I believe they were 11th. How are you feeling about the future of the team after this season? Are you feeling optimistic, pessimistic, neutral? Are you somewhere in between? You let us know. 615-737-1025. I will also tell you how I'm feeling. Coming up next, 615-737-1025. Tee it up with us at the 5th Annual 615 Open, May 28th at Hermitage Golf Course. We are once again supporting Folds of Honor to help them fund life-changing scholarships for families of America's fallen heroes. Register now to player sponsor at 615open.com.
this one hurts. To see probably hurts one of the most of my career, playing, coaching, just how much we went through it together, how much belief there was, and how we stuck together through all kinds of different things, and just fell short. I always say it's tough to beat a team 3 times in, a 9-game span or whatever it was, and they got the bounce, or they got the play tonight that we didn't get.
That was Andrew Burnett following the Predators' loss 3-2 to the Sharks last night. The Predators do have one more game this season, Thursday at home against Anaheim, and we have tickets to give away for that game. So be listening, 615-737-1025. But the loss last night, coupled with a Kings win in Seattle, eliminated the Predators, from playoff contention. So my question for all of you, we've got a lot of questions about the Predators that we will attempt to answer over the coming days and weeks. But let's start here. How confident are you in the future of the team after this season? 615-737-1025. Let's go to James on our phone line. James, thank you for calling and waiting. Please go ahead.
Yeah, how confident am I? I'm not that confident. After listening to you guys last night cover it, I was heartbroken, depressed, and the one thing I've said, pretty sure all of the Preds fans that can agree with me, I'm going to say this. Andrew Burnett is going to be fired after this season with the new GM rolling in. I'm confident that this offseason we're going to have a big roster change. We're going to at least attempt to be good, but I got to say this. Andrew Burnett's being fired.
Thank you for the call, James. Now, James is not going out on a limb saying that because, as we often see in sports, when a new GM comes in, he likes to hire his own coach. We saw it the last time the Predators made a coaching change with Barry Trotz coming in, John Hines being let go, and Brunette coming in. So it would not be a shock at all if Brunette were to be fired after this season.
How many years does he have left on his contract?
That's a good question. Willie knows the answer. One.
I would tend to believe, and I could be wrong on this one. Maybe he does what the new GM, what Barry did. Not necessarily, don't fire him. He only has 1 year left. You got to pay him anyway. He's a good coach. And maybe being a lame duck coach is a bad thing in a sense, but if I don't have to fire, it's not like he's a horrible coach. I know people probably want to see change. I get that, but he has a year left on his contract. I would tend to believe that they would try to keep him for that last year rather than to move on from him.
Well, you guys know how I feel. I think that coaching staff should be commended for all that was thrown at them, and in particular, how they handled the trade deadline when they traded 4 guys, and they stayed steady and stayed in the race until last night. I think that was a tremendous job of retooling, reshaping, rolling with the punches. So I thought this was a well-coached team, and when Barry Trotz doubled down on the coaching staff around Thanksgiving, when everybody thought, when they came back from Sweden, and then a couple days later, they lost at home to Florida 8-3. They looked terrible. Nothing was going right. And Barry Trotz said, I think the coaches are doing a good job. I think they're coaching their butts off. People thought he was crazy for saying that. But give them credit for never losing the room. And when you have guys that have won Stanley Cups, and you have guys that have won not just, being on Stanley Cup teams, but leading Stanley Cup teams, and you keep those guys together and you have them driven to save the season when you're dead last in the league to start December, your coach is doing something right. So I think Andrew Burnett and his coaching staff get a very solid grade for this year, and I hope that they are rewarded. And I understand when a new GM comes in, sometimes they just want to start fresh and start over. That could be an option. But I think they should be watching closely how tight-knit this group stayed through the tough times. I think that should go a long way. Forget about what you think the system is and the X's and O's and all that stuff, but keeping a tight-knit crew through the turmoil of this year was not an easy thing. And they did a great job with that.
Do you think they, because obviously, the fan base, they're looking at it more so over the last 2 years. And I know it's been 3 out of the last 4, but the last 2 years, they started off not good. And they had to fight
is a
their
criticism.
way. Yeah, they had to fight their way to try to get. So it's not like because a team, you can have sort of, it's this dichotomy that you're in. It's like, he doesn't start off well. We think he's a bad coach. But then the second half of the season, this team plays well. He coaches his tail off. He's a good coach. So which one is he? Is he the beginning or is he the end? That's what you're trying to figure out. So if you're evaluating him, do you evaluate him on the beginning of the last 2 seasons, or do you evaluate on him on how he kept the team together and almost each year managed to find themselves in the playoff, regardless of how bad they started?
It's a fair question.
It's a fair question.
But let's not overlook one big thing that you've already mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Who was missing when they were sinking to the bottom? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He missed 13 games. He missed 1 late, which they lost, but the other 12, they won only 3 of the 12. So that's not a coincidence. Losing him was not easy, especially when they were trying to retool the way they played, which was the mantra, the task given to the coaching staff when they were awful last year, right? They were reshaping how they were playing. Then they lost Roman Josi. So I'm not making excuses for them because that's where they lost the season, right? If they had just been able to tread water a little bit more, found a way to win a couple more close games, they're going to end up 2 or 3 points short where they wanted to go. But so you have to factor all of that in. But I think we have to make sure that we know that they were missing their best player when they did sink to the bottom.
And Derek, another thing to keep in mind as well, it depends on who the Predators hire to be the GM.
Mm-hmm.
If, for example, the Predators hire Tom Fitzgerald as GM or president of hockey operations, Tom Fitzgerald and Andrew Brunette were teammates with the Predators. So perhaps Fitzgerald would be more open-minded to keeping Brunette around. But as is often the case when a new GM comes in, the previous coach usually ends up leaving. So we'll see. And we'll talk more about Brunette over the course of the week as well. Let's go to Dylan in Antioch on our phone line. Dylan, thank you for calling and waiting. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys. I really enjoyed this ride here at the end of the season, even though it didn't turn out well. So just want to say that. But what I've been wondering about is the Saros contract. And I know with the cap going up, it's going to look a lot more favorable. But with new potential GMs coming in, and I don't think Haslam was around when the contract was signed. I'm not sure of that. But do you think the Saros contract would be something a potential GM may want to try to get out from under? And do you think they'd really entertain GMs who would even want to do that? And I just didn't know if you guys had any idea of how potential GMs view the Saros contract as a whole. And I'll hang up a minute.
Thank you, Dylan. Before we answer that question, Matt in Nashville. Matt, you're right. Matt says, is D-Mace not eligible for the Bell? Dichotomy is a pretty good word, and Bell-worthy.
There we go. I like it.
That's right.
Racket.
Damn.
What a complete and total oversight on my part. I apologize, Derek.
No problem, man.
I apologize.
You didn't do it on purpose.
I know that UC Saros is going to be a major topic of conversation. Willie, yesterday, as we were talking about the Predators' decision to go with Onanen over Saros in this game, we made sure to emphasize that Saros, because of the decision, a lot of people assumed that, hey, UC Saros stinks, he's struggling, and Onanen is playing so much better. Onanen had been sensational since the Olympic break, but especially over the past week, the game in Anaheim, the game against Minnesota last weekend. But we made sure to emphasize that Saros has also been playing well since the Olympic break. But of course, because he was in net for the loss against Utah, in between Onanen's incredible performance in Anaheim and the win against Minnesota, it makes Saros look worse by comparison. But as I've made sure to mention countless times, I know a lot of you know this as well. UC Soros has a no movement clause in his contract. That clause in his contract stays in his contract even if the GM who signed him to that contract, Barry Trotz, is no longer the GM. The new GM can't come in and say, well, I didn't agree to that clause, so no movement clause for you, UC Soros. He's got a no movement clause until 2031. So if UC Soros wants to stay, he can stay. But Willie, I understand Predators fans, a lot of Predators fans, the vocal minority maybe of Predators fans, feel a certain way about UC Soros. And I understand. We talked about it last week. He has declined from his peak, but he is still a solid goaltender. I understand the optics of your $7.74 million per year goaltender sitting on the bench in a must-win game. I get that. But who knows what the new GM will think? But I have to imagine that new GM probably sees Soros as a part of the future.
I think so. Soros will be 31 during the course of the season next year. He turned 30, I think, during this season. I could be off. He's 30 right now. But nonetheless, he's got several years, I think, of really good hockey in him. I hope, and I do believe.
He turns 31 next week.
Next week. All right. So next year is his age 31 year. I would like to think there's 4 or 5 really good seasons left that he's got. And I'd like to see him get back up to his peak game. I believe that he can. And now that Justus Annunen has emerged and taken his game to another level, I think the goaltender tandem is a strength of the team. I think where they have to take a look, and it's going to depend on the new GM's vision of how quickly he wants to address it. But, I think they are a key defender away. Maybe that's Tanner Molendyk in time. They're probably their number one defense prospect. Maybe there's another veteran on the free agent market that could be an upgrade. So there's a lot of questions on how to maximize the D-core. And obviously they're still searching for the top center that can anchor the lineup. So there are other priorities to me way, way before you get to the goaltending. And UC Soros didn't have a great year. That's 2 straight years where he hasn't had a great year. I think he had an okay year. Annunen made big strides. But I think in the big picture, if I'm the new GM coming in, I like my goaltending. It's not a problem.
615-737-1025. We'll continue this conversation. We have a lot of reaction. Plus, I haven't answered my own question about how I feel about the future of the team after this season. So I will do that coming up next. We will also pay tribute to the late Dave McInnes. The story broke right as we were getting off the air last night that Coach Mack has passed at the age of 74. I want to hear Derek's thoughts and memories on Dave McInnes coming up next as well. 615-737-1025 today. The Nashville Sounds take on Worcester at First Horizon Park. First pitch is at 6:35. Catch all of the action on Sports Talk 830, presented by Family Leisure and Social Cantina. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. Trevor Maddich, ESPN football analyst, will join us in about 20 minutes. We'll get into the NFL draft and more with our friend Trevor. We'll continue the Predators conversation in just a moment. But before we do, I do want to take some time for Derek to say some words about Dave McGinnis. As many of you know, Dave McGinnis, or Coach Mac, as a lot of you knew him, Dave McGinnis died yesterday at the age of 74. Dan Pompei of The Athletic reported that McGinnis died of renal failure, but he was an excellent analyst on Titans radio, had a long NFL coaching career, including, of course, here in Tennessee with Jeff Fisher. I did not know Dave McGinnis. I may have met him once or twice, but I've heard so many great things about how wonderful of a man he was. Derek, you were on the Titans when McGinnis was a part of the staff. I know that you knew Dave McGinnis for a long time. So I do want to take the opportunity for you to say some words about McGinnis.
And I know my sentiment will be, well, what I say will be the sentiment of just about everybody, if not everyone that speaks on Coach Mac. One is when he first got there, it was just, he had this sort of this spirit about him. It was just always upbeat and encouraging and always had a smile on his face. And I was able to connect with him because it's just something about defensive guys that I sort of gravitate to, coaches. And it seems like we sort of think alike when it comes to the game and how aggressive you're going to be. And that's what that was my thing with Coach Mac. And no matter what, he would always talk to you. He would, in practice, he'd coach you up. Even if you're on the opposite side of the ball, he would coach you up. But he was just a guy that no matter when I ran into him, I spoke to him, he was always talking ball. He was always asking how you're doing. And he was always laughing and smiling. When they say he was about ball, he was about ball. That's what he was, a coach's coach. That's what he was. And each and every time I crossed paths with him and sat down and, talk with him, he was more standing up than sitting down a lot of times. It was just talking about football and talking about, the teams that we had back when he was there. And even when I left, it was, and I know he will be missed in that building. Not just in that building, but throughout that organization, because not only was he a coach here, but he also obviously became, a part of the play-by-play team. And his, this team and what you hear on Sundays, you're going to miss that voice of his. That voice was synonymous with Tennessee Titans football.
Well said. Willie, any thoughts on the passing of Dave McGinnis?
Yeah, I think he struck me as a guy, and I didn't know him very well. I knew him only through the media, but he was a guy that I thought was a great ambassador for the organization. He was obviously a great coach for a long time, a career football lifer, been in a lot of great settings. I always thought that, we used to have those great John McClain charity dinners back when George Plaster brought John McClain in as a regular on our show years and years ago, and the Titans were relatively new. We would do some charity dinners every year. Jeff Fisher was always fantastic. Floyd Reese, fantastic, coming to those. And we would rotate some other guys through. Mm-hmm. And Dave McGinnis, I always thought, was one of the best storytellers at those things. He was just phenomenal. He's got a little bit of that Terry Crisp human side where he just relates to people. And he's great at telling stories about the characters of the game and his experiences with the Chicago Bears and then becoming the head coach in Arizona, then joining the Titans. So just a great communicator and a great character of the game. And I thought that did translate very well when he joined the radio team later in his career. So we're just really sorry to hear about his passing. And I hope the Titans really hone in on that part of it, how important that is to an organization, because I think they probably could have utilized 10 Dave McGinnis's, right? The more guys like that you can find, the more your organization, I think, looks good.
The benefits.
Yeah.
Well said, both of you. We send our condolences to the family and friends of Dave McGinnis, who passed yesterday at the age of 74. Let's get back into our conversation about the Predators. And here's the question for all of you following the Predators' elimination from playoff contention last night. 615-737-1025. How confident are you in the future of the team after the season? We've heard from Willie and Derek. I am going to answer my own question. And I can hear all of you right now in your cars. Surprise, surprise, Adam's being negative. I'm skewing more toward pessimism. And I acknowledge that the new GM hire will dictate a lot of my feelings about this. And as I said on the top of the show, the Predators should be commended for how valiantly they fought to get back in the playoff race. I would read to you the odds all the time. It was 0.8%, 1.5%, 3%, 10%. By late March, they were in a playoff spot. Earlier this month, they were in a playoff spot. They should be commended for that. I'm not taking that away from them at all. But you know, I've coined a phrase, which I wrote in a headline 4 years ago when I worked for The Athletic. The Predators will not get better until they allow themselves to get worse. And I know, as we mentioned, that the Predators have a solid foundation of young players. The 5th-ranked prospect pool in the NHL, according to Scott Wheeler of The Athletic. But we had Scott Wheeler of The Athletic on the program last Tuesday, and he said that the prospects the Predators have right now, they will help the Predators field a competitive roster. They'll have a high floor. But even Wheeler acknowledged that this Predators team, that farm system, does not have that superstar player who can carry them over the top. And I will continue to say that until the Predators find that player, I am going to be skeptical about how truly competitive they can be. I also look at the current roster. I look at the top 5 point scorers on the team this season. Here are the ages of those top point scorers when next season starts. 32, 35, 36, 36, and 24. Philip Forsberg will be 32 when next season starts. Ryan O'Reilly will be 35. Steven Stamkos will be 36. Roman Josi will be 36. And Luke Evangelista, the outlier, he'll be 24. Steven Stamkos, fabulous second half, 3/4 of the season, but he's getting older. Roman Josi is getting older. Ryan O'Reilly is getting older. You can only count on them for so much longer to be the drivers of your team. And look, maybe the Predators pull an Islanders from last year and somehow win the draft lottery and move to the top of the draft and find that guy. The odds are against it, but maybe that happens. So as impressive as the Predators' run was from around Thanksgiving to now, again, they're 11th in points percentage in the NHL since November 26th. So they're basically a top 10 team in the NHL by record over the past, 4 or 5 months or whatever. At the same time, the fact remains that the Predators are missing the playoffs for the 3rd time in 4 years. The fact remains that the Predators are missing the playoffs in consecutive years for the first time since 2013 and 2014. The fact remains that the Predators have not won a playoff series since 2018. So a lot of my feelings on this will be dictated by their hire as the next GM and what that next GM decides to do. So although there are reasons, I admit that there are, there are some reasons to feel a little bit better about the direction of the team. I maintain my point that Until they can get that one player. We saw one on the ice last night, Macklin Celebrini. Until the Predators can get that one player somehow, whether they draft him, whether they package picks and prospects and they trade for that player, maybe the Predators can find their Matthew Tkachuk. Remember when the Florida Panthers traded for Matthew Tkachuk? He changed their entire organization. They changed the way they played. They also hired a new coach that did that too. But they changed the way they played. He became the face of the franchise. He brought swagger. And look, 3 Stanley Cup final appearances and 2 Stanley Cup championships later, the Panthers are doing pretty well. So there are multiple ways you can try to find that guy. But until they do, I'm going to remain skewing toward pessimism.
There's no question. They need that. They're looking for that guy. They're gonna need better players. They're going to need some additions to win at the level that everybody's trying to win. And I don't know that's going to happen in the next year. But the question is, because most teams are, there's only a handful of teams every year that are lined up to have, with those types of players in their prime, that have the best chance of winning. And there's always some teams at the bottom that are searching for those players that are lost in the continued shuffle of a rebuild. So for the other teams, and I know people love to bash on the mushy middle where you don't want to be there, I would contend that the question is, for the new GM, do you want to try to continue to have the expectation of winning at the highest level that you possibly can while you're searching for those players? Or are you in that very basic take of, we got to lose so we can get those top players who are 18, and then in a few years, maybe we'll have those guys? That's the dilemma. That's the philosophical question. And you know me, I think you're rewarded in the long run by trying to win. And when you have guys who are like, every day that Ryan O'Reilly and Steven Stamkos are Predators, even as they age, I think they have a huge value to the younger players that are going to be essential to the next nucleus. So what I think the new GM is going to have, he's going to have options, because they have a deep pool of prospects, some of which are just getting to the NHL level and just starting to scratch the surface of what they can do. Hopefully, collectively, there's a lot more growth that's going to happen there. And then their best prospects are still not to Nashville yet. So there's a lot that I think you can envision in the next 2 or 3 years that could be really good. And even though they're aging, the pros that they have, Stamkos, O'Reilly, Forsberg, Yossi, yeah, they're getting older, but they will be great mentors for those guys. So how do you get the other guy? How do you get that crown jewel, as we like to call it, Adam? I don't know. They have to get a little bit lucky. But I don't think it's worth taking everything and moving it back and saying, we got to lose. We got to lose. Get everybody out of here so we can lose. I don't like that. I don't like that path.
I think the only person that's immune to sort of this, hey, we're going to, be bad before we're ever good, or we have to be bad before we're good. The only person immune to that is the owner. I can't see a head coach coming in here and, agreeing to, okay, we're going to scrap this thing my first year here, and I don't know when we're going to be able, unless I just believe in a plan that you set forth by the GM, and you give me, every security saying we're going to stick with you no matter what. We're going to allow you to play it through. If you don't do that, I'm not sure any coach is willing to, go through a rebuild their first year, knowing in hockey that it may take you some years to come out of that, and you may not even be here because why? The fans are going to get tired, and the fans are going to want you fired.
And Willie, I acknowledge what you're saying about, you've got O'Reilly, Stamkos, Yossi, Forsberg around the younger players. Barry Trotz has talked about this with us all season long. This is not my attempt to diminish that, because I can't see that necessarily. I'm not in the dressing room. But I just think that where I'm projecting this team right now, I just see a low ceiling.
You don't okay, so you don't believe in the prospect pool that they have right now, then is what you're saying. Because they don't have the superstar guy. But
no, well, I
collectively you don't think that there's a lot of growth in that group. We're talking about 10 or 12 guys that if 5 or 6 of them become really good players, that's how the floor gets higher.
I will defer to Scott Wheeler on this because Scott Wheeler is the expert. He's the one that ranked the Predators prospect system 5th overall in the NHL. And you asked him the question last week about the pros and cons of, or the differences. I can't remember the exact word you used. I'm sorry. But you talked about, the prospect pools that aren't deep but have that guy versus the Predators prospect pool, which is deep but doesn't have that guy. And Wheeler said, with the players that the Predators have in their pool right now, Brady Martin, Riker Lee, Tanner Molendyk, Matt, you can throw Matthew Wood in there. I believe Wheeler included
Igor
Matthew
Stern
Wood.
is another one.
Right. With those players, he said, I went back and listened to it this morning. He said, you'll have a competitive team. You'll have a high floor. But he also acknowledged that Brady Martin specifically, Predators fans are really hoping that Brady Martin can be that guy. Number 5 overall pick. I've told you about teams that win the Stanley Cup with top picks that they drafted. He even acknowledged that the offensive upside may not be there for him to be that guy. He can be part of it, but I think he needs someone else. So I'm not saying that the prospects stink. I trust Scott Wheeler. I know Scott Wheeler. I worked with Scott Wheeler. He's a smart guy. He watches all of these guys. I don't have time to watch all of these guys. If he thinks the Predators prospect system is one of the best in the league, I believe him. But I also believe him when he says you're going to be able to field a competitive roster. It goes back to what your definition of competitive is. I know, Willie, that you are okay. I mean, I know you want the Predators to win. I don't want to make it sound like you don't want the Predators to win. Your definition of competitive is more, hey, be in the playoff mix, make the playoffs. No, it's not?
No, I'm striving to win the Stanley Cup like everybody is. Every single team has the same objective. But it's hard to win the Stanley Cup. 31 teams don't win the Cup every year. I think if you become a consistent winner and you're constantly making steady gains, then you can get into a position where you can win the Stanley Cup if things go right. They're not there right now. But let me give you a couple of prospects. Let's just look at how did the Predators get into the window where they had their best series of seasons, right? 2015 through about 2019, 2020, right? Where they had it lined up. Who were their best players? They had Roman Josi, who was a second-round pick. They had Shea Weber, who was a second-round pick. They had Pekka Rinne, who was an 8th-round pick. They had Victor Arvidsson, who was a 4th-round pick.
Yes,
I think.
That sounds right.
Craig Smith, 2nd-round pick. Matthias Ekholm, 2nd or 3rd-round pick. Ryan Ellis, 1st-round pick. Seth Jones, who they swapped for Ryan Johansson, high 1st-round picks. You see where I'm going, right? They didn't stink for 5 or 6 years and get the high picks, and they built a great nucleus of players. UC Saros, third-round pick, backup goalie, big contributor to those teams. So it can be done, in my experience. Like, take this 10 or 12 or 15 guys that Scott Wheeler lists on their prospect pool. Is there a Victor Arvidsson in there who is maybe not a top prospect? Victor Arvidsson was never a top prospect. Victor Arvidsson turned into a hell of a player. That's what they need, and that's what they haven't really had the last 3 or 4 years. But this group is new. Like Luke Evangelista, 2nd-round pick. Started into a pretty darn good player, right? I don't know if he's done growing. He's not ever going to be a superstar. But if you have enough guys like that you're drafting and you have team control and you're not overpaying, and you can then go out and use your resources in the free agent market where you got an attractive city to play in, that's how you build a really good winner. That, to me, is the alternative of we got to break it down. We got to trade everybody and stink for a couple years and then start back up. I think they've done too much groundwork with these guys to take all of the steps back. That would be my advice to the new GM, whoever that person is. But that GM is going to have his own ideas.
615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your thoughts on this, and we will get back to it. But coming up next, Trevor Maddich will join us. We'll get into the NFL draft with Trevor coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Darnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Let's go to our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com and welcome in our friend Trevor Maddich, who is brought to you by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Hi, Trevor. How are you?
Adam, I'm good. Have you guys gotten all the insect repellent scraped off of Derek's body by now?
He's still got that. He's still got that smell. You know, when you put the bug spray. That's always. I hate that when
bug spray and smoke.
Smoke. Yeah.
What kind of smoke, Derek?
Oh. It's a very good question.
I plead the fifth on that one.
Anyway. So, Trevor, over the weekend, a story broke about Ruben Bain. being involved in a fatal car accident about 2 years ago. We've seen reports that NFL teams were aware of this before the story came out, including the Titans, as reported by Nick Suss of the Tennessean. I'm wondering if you think that this story, plus, of course, I've got to mention by law, the short arms, do you think that Ruben Bain tumbles at all in the first round of the draft next week?
I don't think this story will cause him to tumble, Adam, just because the NFL already knows that stuff. I mean, there have been plenty of character flaws that have snuck past scouts over the years that have really bit them after the draft. And I don't think that they would let a guy that will go as high as Ruben Bain will go, which is to say at worst the first half of the first round. I don't think they would let him sneak by without going through everything. And what happened in this crash? I mean, the only thing I've been able to ascertain was that he was driving. According to the reports, he apparently rear-ended a car in front of him, and then his vehicle pinballed off of concrete barriers and stuff like that, and a young lady in the car died from her injuries from that crash. But I haven't been able to see anything that suggests that he broke the law. I haven't seen anything about impairment. And if you did, you let me know. But I haven't seen anything like that. It seems like it was just a terrible accident and not the kind of thing that would be seen by most NFL teams as a character flaw that would take them or take him off of their boards. And so, and even if it was that kind of character flaw, what would it have to be? Is this a one-time thing, or is this guy a habitual crazy person? And so I don't think that'll matter. I think what matters more is those arms. And I think he may drop a little bit because of the nature of his shorter arms and the history of success of pass rushers with arms his length in the league, which has been relatively limited. And I think because of that, whoever does get him, if he does fall a bit, will end up with a great contributor to their team. Because Ruben Bain has been hearing for the entire draft process about how he can't play because of his arms. Well, guess what? All these terrific power 4 tackles that he's had to face over his career that he's just dominated left and right, they didn't ask him how long his arms were. They just knew that he beat them and got to the quarterback over them. And I think he's going to want to prove to everybody that he can play football regardless of the length of his arms. And so, yeah, I think he will drop, not because of the crash, but because of the arms. But I think that whoever gets him will have an incredibly motivated player.
Trevor, there are multiple teams with multiple first-round picks next week. The Jets, I believe, the Browns, the Rams, the Cowboys. Which team armed with multiple first-round picks do you think is going to try to use those picks to move up?
I kind of tend to think the Cowboys will, just because the Cowboys do stuff like that. And with that kind of ammunition, I don't know that their owner, Jerry Jones, would be able to resist the temptation. I mean, their highest pick is number 12, so they'd probably want to get up above that if they were looking for one of the premier players in this draft. And keep in mind that there are only about 12 players in the draft with an actual honest-to-goodness first-round grade. And so starting where Dallas is drafting with that 12th pick and then below, you're really looking at guys with high second-round grades that you'll be taking in the first round because that's all there is left. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Jerry Jones said, if we can't get a guy like Caleb Downs, the safety out of Ohio State, who is mocked to them, by the way, by a lot of people, Downs would be, I think, a real serious playmaker and game wrecker for the Cowboys if he's there and if they take him. But if he's not there and now they're starting to look at just an ordinary, pretty good player, I could see the Cowboys trying to move up a little higher to try to get that game record.
We'll talk with Trevor Maddich, ESPN, NFL, and college analyst. Now, Trevor, why do you think this happens every year? Because it never fails, whether it's right before the draft, the day of the draft, or weeks leading. And when I mean weeks, I mean 2 weeks out from the draft, somewhere around there, that these stories continue to come out. It's not like the NFL doesn't know about them, whether it was Cam Newton back in the day, whether it was, Laramie Tunsil. These stories just continue to come out when and it's presented to everybody like this is the first time the league has known about it. When in actuality, if they're drafting a guy, they're going to do their due diligence as far as their background. So why do you think stuff like this continues to sort of come up, and it may hurt a player, but then some players it doesn't?
Yeah, it's kind of stunning to consider that teams would not, this kind of thing would get by them if it's a real issue, because when you're talking about researching first-round draft choices, NFL teams don't just talk to the college. They talk to everybody at the college. They talk to the equipment managers. They'll talk to some of the teammates kind of farther down the roster who aren't real stars there, just to see what kind of a teammate the guy is and what he's like off the field. They'll talk to his high school coaches. They'll talk to high school teachers. They'll go down into elementary school if they feel like they need to. And they'll get a feel for who this guy is, because the investment is so big that it's hard enough to choose a guy as a player. But if you get a guy who's a great player on tape, but who's a knucklehead or a character risk or a risk for chemistry in the locker room, you better know that too. And so they really go after it. I mean, take a look at Isaiah Wilson, who was the first-round draft choice offensive lineman out of Georgia, I believe, of the Titans a few years ago. He got to the Titans and immediately just became an absolute knucklehead, flake-out, poor decision guy off the field, and ended up not busting a grape with the Titans. I'm not sure if he ever hooked on with anybody else, but I had no inclination from anybody I talked to in Georgia that guy was going to make such poor decisions in his personal life off the field that it would affect his ability to be an NFL football player, but he did. And so, these are the kinds of things that make you once bitten, twice shy. And this is why I think about with Ruben Bain. It's well known that he was involved in that crash as a driver. The question is, did he do something criminally wrong, or that exposes a character flaw? And I think you can look at Jeffrey Simmons, the great defensive lineman for the Titans. He had some issues in high school before he got to Mississippi State. And Mississippi State went through the entire process of talking to his elementary school teachers, et cetera, to find out if this was a good guy, even though he had an off-the-field issue with an action that he took that he got in a lot of trouble for before he got to Mississippi State. And what they found was that the issue wasn't like it was reported, and that Jeffrey Simmons was a fantastic human being. And Mississippi State was happy to have him, and he became one of their stellar bell cow leaders in every positive way imaginable. So you can't just read an article, I think, if you're a fan, and then make a decision on how the NFL will look at a player.
Now, has your sort of prediction of, or the way you see the draft going, has it changed much from when you start putting together what the draft could look like as far as who will draft who to how you see the draft now? Take away what happened to, the story that came out about Bain, because you believe it's going to be more so his arms that gets him drafted a little bit lower than that other stuff. But has the way you see the draft go, has it changed much?
I think this draft is weird because there's only one straight up lock first round quarterback in this draft. And that is Fernando Mendoza, who go to the Raiders at number 1, unless something super weird happens. But Ty Simpson from Alabama, people have him anywhere from number 2 to the Jets all the way down into the 3rd round or so. So we don't know where he's going to go. And because of that, it makes the trades really exciting, because the trades aren't going to be nearly as obvious. So I think from a standpoint of how this one might shake out, we talked about this a little bit last week, but without a quarterback to trade up for, the Titans at number 4, it seems like there'd be less opportunity for a team to break the bank in order to move into that spot and let the Titans trade down a little bit. But Jeremiah Love might be the kind of dynamic game breaker that some teams might move up for. And that's why I think it's interesting that I haven't heard anything from the Titans to either confirm or especially to deny that Jeremiah Love might be somebody that they would want. And not certainly, but insiders, reporters, people like that often kind of get information about things like that. But right now, the Titans are happy with everybody thinking that they're going to take Jeremiah Love if he's available. And if the Giants at number 5 or really the Commanders at number 7. Those are the two teams I think that might fall in love with Jeremiah Love. I think the Titans are going to grab him. They might want to trade up to number 4 with the Titans and let the Titans trade down just a little bit and still get somebody that they like. And so to me, watching how that might shake out is one of the interesting things in this draft, because it just feels so good and it feels so right that the Titans will take Jeremiah Love according to how so many mock drafts are shaking out. And Derek, how you thought many, many weeks ago before I heard anybody else talk about it, it just seems to me like it's a setup. And so I'm interested to see how that shakes out.
Well, let's take it a step further, Trevor. Trevor Maddich is with us from ESPN. Let's take that hypothetical where Jeremiah Love is sitting there. The Titans are on the clock at 4, and you've got 2 or 3 teams right below taking their swings and saying, this is the guy we want. What do you think you could get in addition? Because I think that's what would have Mike Borgonzi having to make a decision, is how much he really wants the player that he wants. Maybe that's Jeremiah Love, maybe it's not. But what can you get in addition for moving down, say, 2 or 3 slots? What are we talking?
Well, I don't think we'll be talking about a whole lot because it's not a quarterback, so teams wouldn't pay a premium to move up. But I'm sure you'd get their first-round draft choice and maybe a number 2 this year, maybe also a number 2 next year in order to be able to do that. And certainly the Titans have enough holes in their roster that would be very attractive to them. But also keep in mind that the way they built this team in free agency and with trades leading up to the draft gives them a lot of flexibility there, because you have the top tier superstars, right? And on the Titans, that's Jeffrey Simmons, and they hope Cam Ward, but he's not there yet. But that's the only guy. Then you've got the bottom of the roster, which is your core special teamers, et cetera. And it's the middle of the roster that you want to be competitive with so that your stars can put you over the top. So they need stars beyond just the quarterback, hopefully, and then Jeffrey Simmons. But the middle of the roster is what the Titans have done such a good job in this cycle of bolstering, not to be great, but to be competitive, so that then they can bring in that kind of game breaker. And so as you look at what they might be able to get the Titans if they trade up, to your question, Willie, if they trade down, they'll be able to get some things that will continue to help them improve their roster. But the case against trading down, unless they think it's just 1 or 3 spots to 5 or 7, and they think they can get one of the guys they like Sonny Styles, the linebacker out of Ohio State, et cetera. The case against trading down too far is that the middle of the roster, as they're building it now, will make this team competitive and no better than competitive.
How far down do you think, Trevor?
To get a game breaker.
Yeah, okay, so
Well,
you keep using
7.
the game breaker. How many slots can you move down and still get a game breaker in this draft? Is it 7? Is it 8? Like, how many game breakers are in this draft in your mind?
Okay, I think at number 5, the Giants, if they trade with the Titans, then the Giants would take, if they take Jeremiah Love, then I think Sonny Styles will probably still be there available for the Titans, and he's a defensive game record. If they move 2 more down, the problem you're going to have, in other words, trade with number 7, the Commanders, you've got the Browns and the Giants, by the way, at number 5, are both in desperate need of offensive linemen. So that still gives you a pretty good chance that Styles is going to fall to you. But I think beyond number 5, you're moving away from game breaker or game wrecker now into very good player. And they need a game breaker with that value of that number 4.
Trevor Maddich has been our guest on D-Mates, Vin Ginendonic. He joins us every Tuesday, and he is brought to you by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, as always, a pleasure. Next week when we speak to you, it will be draft week. Thank God. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Adam.
615-737-1025. Coming up next, I want to revisit something Teron Davenport said on our show yesterday that I'm curious for Derek's opinion on it, because he wasn't on the show yesterday. So we'll play it for Derek coming up next. 615-737-1025. But first, if you would like a pair of tickets to see the Predators in their regular season finale against the Anaheim Ducks at Bridgestone Arena on Thursday, be caller number 4 at 615-737-1025. Caller number 4 will win a pair of tickets to see the Predators against the Anaheim Ducks on Thursday in the Predators season finale at Bridgestone Arena. Puck drop at 7 o'clock. Good luck. Caller number 4, 615-737-1025. Willie Darnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game.
as far as on their board, I find it hard to believe that he's on there. I haven't got any indication that he's not, but I will find it hard to believe. I'm not going to say on their board. I think Amy. I think ownership is probably. I would have a hard time imagining ownership, Amy approving of that selection.
Which is interesting, Tehran. Is it you would find it hard to believe Amy approving of that pick because of this story or because of something else?
No, because you got to go back to the Isaiah Wilson situation, and just the way things worked out with that. I think he made it tougher for anybody that has stuff to become a member of the Titans, and especially at such a high pick.
That was Tehran Davenport. Thought I muted myself right there. Pulled a Rexford.
Yeah.
That was Tehran Davenport yesterday on our program talking about Ruben Bain. And he brought up that point about Amy Adams Strunk unsolicited Derek Mason.
Yes.
And I remember we had Chase on the show yesterday. Chase pounced on that comment because what did we hear when the Titans announced their new front office structure? That Amy Adams Strunk was empowering Mike Borgonzi. So what do you think when you hear Tehran seem to suggest that ownership would intervene if the team wanted to pick Ruben Bain?
One, I think the way Tehran was careful with how he said it makes me think that is what he's hearing inside of the building with people that he trusts within the building or closely associated to the owner, because he was measured in what he said and whatnot. Then he brought up the Isaiah Wilson, in particular the Isaiah Wilson situation, which I kind of see different, because you didn't know that about Isaiah Wilson. Nobody knew that. You know this about Bain. Nobody questions Bain's character. There's nothing more coming out that we've seen pertaining to the accident and ultimately the death of the individual, the young lady. So outside of that, you haven't heard anything sort of come out behind that, unless the Titans and other people know a little bit more than what is being put out there. To that, I would say probably not, because whatever they know, I'm sure a lot of other people know. And as we know in this sport, things will be pushed out there, whether it be on draft day, a couple of days before the draft, a couple of hours before the draft. It will be out there. So, which makes me think that he's heard something in particular about Bain in this situation. But I go back to Jeffrey Simmons. Jeffrey Simmons had, issues, an issue that was scrutinized and that was picked apart, rightfully so, because if you're drafting somebody this high, you want to make sure that you have all your bases covered or all your rocks turned. So Jeff went through that and came out on the other side, and look at what he's been for this organization. Not just a fantastic player, but a fantastic person for this organization, especially in the community. So if you're going to take the Isaiah Wilson, I can take the Jeffrey Simmons. And again, this is not something that, at least it assumes something that Bain was hiding. It seemed like something that all 32 teams should have known.
We do have some reporting on this, by the way, Willie and Derek. Nick Suss, friend of the show of the Tennessean, reported this earlier today. Quote, a source with knowledge of the situation told the Tennessean that the Titans first learned of Ruben Baines' careless driving citation and the connected fallout via a prospect background check ran last summer, and that the incident, quote unquote, didn't really affect the team's evaluation of Bain.
To this source's knowledge, most NFL teams found out about the incident around the same time the Titans did, but no teams have yet taken Bane off their draft board.
And that's what I'm saying. This is something that they have been able to digest, pick apart even more, talk to Bane, talk to the people that were involved, the family that lost their loved one. And it seems like the short arms has been the story more than this. So but to me, this is something that I think Teron is hearing from people that he trusts, because I don't think he would have just brought that up.
I know, but Titans fans don't like the idea of Amy Adams Strunk seemingly having influence in the decision.
But isn't that, but if I'm an owner, if I have that thought, if something's happened like that, and listen, he's been exonerated, whatever, he hasn't been charged with anything. But even still that, if I'm an owner, I have a right to say, you know what? Yeah, the kid, he's done terrific since then, but I just don't want to draft him. That's all right. You should be able, and fans shouldn't get upset with you because you're choosing to not draft an individual based on something that happened that you're not comfortable with, even though you know that since that day or since that incident, he's been great. You still have a reason not to draft him. And if Titan fans are mad at Amy for that, then, I mean, you've never been a business owner, period, if you're going to be upset with her about that.
But I think Trevor made the great point. If you're just reading an article and saying, boy, I don't think I want that guy on my team, just because of you feel like some of the audience is going to say, why did they draft that guy? Then that's probably not doing it right? What Trevor was talking about, what you've been talking about, you have to take it now to the several different levels to try to determine, was this a guy that just got into a really bad accident on a one-time thing, or was it, I think as Trevor put it, like, does that reveal a pattern of behavior where there is question about his character? Because I think that's the bottom line. People, especially young people, can make big mistakes, but is that who they really are, or is that a pattern? That's the question. And where it comes into play is, I think, when you're considering at number 4, could I trade down just 1 or 2 spots, get an extra second-round pick or whatever, which this team desperately could use, and still get a premier player? If Bane is no longer on that list of 6 or 7 guys of premier players, or if he's not on your list, especially, that affects the whole draft. That affects your big decision.
But what if this, even though, maybe the Titans have them on their board, maybe they don't as far as the first round. But maybe this is a way where, because now this stuff is coming out, Bane drops, maybe because of that and the short arm. So he ends up dropping, 12, 13, somewhere around there. Would it then be good for the Titans if they move and they still get an impact player, but they get him a little bit further down the draft because of what has sort of come out in the news?
615-737-1025. We'll bring Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports into the conversation. He knows a thing or two about the Titans, so we'll ask Easton what he thinks about this situation and more. 615-737-1025. Before we get to our friend Easton, let me remind you that all of our off-season football coverage here on 1025 The Game is presented by Tennessee Brew Works. Locally brewed, community-driven, Tennessee Brew Works, the official craft beer of the football offseason coverage on ESPN 1025 The Game.
All right, let's talk Loan Pronto. Credit card interest rates can be out of control these days, over 29% in a lot of cases, and most people are only making the minimum payments on that. So you're getting nowhere. In fact, you could be falling behind. So with Loan Pronto's rapid equity loan, they can get you in a better spot. Many homeowners don't realize you can use the equity in your home to access hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, and your interest rate is going to be a lot better. So with Loan Pronto's rapid equity loan, you can pay off your credit cards, your existing HELOC, car loan, get money for that home improvement project. and then you can nail that credit card, get it down to zero. One client got $100,000 approved, saved over $1,500 a month. And with Loan Pronto, you can do all of this from your phone. Zero out of pocket, no hard credit pull up front, no appraisal, no long drawn out bank process, and no touching your first mortgage. Rates are at near 3-year lows. So go to loanpronto.com and check it out, or just call them at 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. Phone number again, 615-499-5780. They've got 2,800 5-star Google reviews, does Loan Pronto, so check them out. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D-Mace, Vingan and Donick, 102.5 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. Let's continue the Titans conversation by going to our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com, and welcoming in our friend Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports. Easton, welcome back to the program. How are you?
Hey, guys. Good to hear from you.
Yes, thank you for joining us as always. All right, Easton, this first question will set up my next question. So here's the first question. Based on your intel, how do you expect the first 3 picks of the NFL draft to go next week?
Well, the first one's real tricky, but I think Fernando Mendoza is going to be a Raider. After that,
quite a limb you're on there.
Yeah, quite a limb, but I'm going to stake my reputation on it. At number 2, this is a thing that has changed in the past 10 to 14 days, right? We spent a lot of the draft season assuming that David Bailey would be on the board past 2 because Arvell Reese would be who the Jets took at 2. But now that seems to have flipped. And what I'm hearing is that front offices around the league have been operating for a matter of weeks at this point, under the assumption that the Jets will be taking David Bailey and letting Arvell Reese fall to whoever may take him after that. If that's not the case, and I only mention that because every Jets beat writer in the world still seems to be clinging to Arvell Reese as the guy at 2, which I find interesting. And I think it's also fair to point out the last 2 years with the Jets in particular, the draft night betting favorite for them has been somebody that was on the board for them, and they passed on them to take somebody else. So we've been wrong about the Jets recently for whatever reason. Maybe their front office just really enjoys fooling everyone.
And you got to have the Jets fans at the draft booing the Jets pick. That's just part of the tradition of the draft. You got to have that.
That's right. They don't have to worry about that because they will boo no matter what. The assumption there is David Bailey, and that's what I think is going to happen. But I'm leaving that open just a little bit. I'll leave that door ajar. At 3, this is where it gets really tricky because the Cardinals, my understanding is that the Cardinals want a tackle. Like ideally, they would just like to take a tackle and move on with their lives. And that's not something that they see a lot of value in doing at 3. And I think that they're right to not see that value. And so they're the number 1 team that I think potential trade-up candidates are calling, and I wouldn't rule out teams like the Cowboys or the Saints or there are a couple of teams right in there that could move up, but really those are the first 2 that come to mind for me. And if they come up, it would be for Arvell Reese, I'm assuming. Now, there's been some rumors today about the Cowboys in particular being in love with Sonny Styles, the stand-up linebacker of Ohio State, and maybe they trade up for him. I can't tell you the last time we saw somebody trade up into the top 10 from outside the top 10 for a middle linebacker. Maybe Old Man Jerry is the first one to go off the beaten path on that, but we'll see. I think that any team that trades up is going to be coming for Arvell Reese, and that would be at 3. And if the Cardinals can't find a trade partner there, it's either going to be Reese or Jeremiah Love, and I think Reese makes more sense for them. And so I'll say, to answer your question in the longest possible winded way, the most likely outcome in the first 3 picks is Mendoza, Reese, and Bailey are all off the board.
All right. So let's operate under that assumption. If Jeremiah Love is available when the Titans are picking at number 4, if you had to bet on the Titans picking Love or trading down, where would you lean right now?
I would place a comfortable, sizable bet on Jeremiah Love between those 2 options. And that's not because I think the Titans don't want to trade down. I think that they would entertain trade down opportunities in this scenario, but I just don't see, again, if we're assuming that both of those top 2 edge rushers are off the board, the only possible trade down scenario I can see at this stage is that the Cowboys really are in love with Sonny Styles, and Sonny Styles has been mocked a lot to the Giants at 5, and that's who they seem to be in love with, if you trust the insiders up there. And so if they want to jump the Giants and get Sonny Styles, again, it would be a recently unprecedented move by Jerry to come up for a middle linebacker, but maybe that's what happens. Otherwise, I just don't see the avenue for them to find a trade down partner. And I do think that Love is the most likely pick there if both of those edge guys are gone.
I'm with you, Easton. I think if indeed they do stay at that 4, then Love would be the pick for me. But what do you think it will take for the Titans to move off that for that 4th pick? Because to me, I've said that if you want to come up that high, and there is a sort of a cap on these elite players in this year's draft, or impact players right away on this in this draft. And if you move outside of that top 5, you're not going to be able to get one of those guys. So if you want to move up this far, you got to give me at least, if you got 2 first-round draft picks, and I'm thinking more so Dallas, and I think Kansas City has too, but you have to give me both of them if indeed you want to move up into the top 4, because what you're saying is you need an impact player, and there's not many in a draft. So if you want to move up, you're going to have to give me, your first-round picks for this season.
Yeah, obviously it depends on where you're going, but I'm in the same headspace that you're at. With Dallas in particular, to go from 4 to 12, which is what you'd be doing there, I would need 12 and 20, which is what Dallas has in the first round. Here's what's interesting to me, though. And again, this is speculative, and it gets complicated because we don't know how the Titans have these guys stacked. But for a team like the Cardinals, for example, the reason why I think a trade down with them could make some sense is because if it's true that they want something that they feel like they can get by moving back 3 or 4 or 5 picks, and the value feels relatively the same to them, whether they're picking at 3 or at 5 or 6 or 7, I don't understand why more GMs don't take pretty much anything that's offered to them in that situation. The answer is pride and precedent, because historically speaking, no one's ever made a quote unquote cheap trade in the top 10. It's a top 10 pick. It has prestige. You have to get something notable for it. You've got to feel like you had the team trading with you mortgage their future to come get your pick. But if it's all the same to you and they're offering a free, second and third round pick, I would just take the lashing in the papers the next day and accept the trade. I don't know if the Titans are in that spot or not, but if the Titans were offered something where they felt like they were getting relatively similar value with how they have it graded, moving down to where they're moving to, and we know that Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker, they came in a year ago and said, we want 12 top 100 picks in the next 3 years, and they're currently on pace to have 9 of those. You got to add capital somewhere, and this is a valuable pick. And so I would entertain a trade that, might not look like the greatest fleece of all time in the first round, if in fact you have these guys stacked relatively similarly.
Now, what do you make of the Ruben Bain information? Because obviously this is something, and it has come out, this is something that the Titans have known about, and basically the whole NFL has known about for months. Do you think this hurts him, or do you think eventually it's going to be more so the arm length than anything that hurts him and allows him to slide in the draft?
Yeah, if I'm being 100% honest, I kind of hate the timing of this story coming out. As you alluded to, those of us in and around the league have known this for some time. And I also hate that was the way that it was reacted to, myself included. Everybody in the world who knew it came out and said this has been known for some time. And I guess we probably could have phrased it better, because everyone in the public's reaction was number one, you're not cool. And number two, why didn't you tell us? Which I understand. I think our point in mentioning that was not to be like, haha, we knew it before everybody else, but rather to be clear about this is not new to teams. If we knew it, teams knew it, and they knew it way before we did. There was a report from Nick Suss of the Tennessean that he heard from a source the Titans were aware of it during background checks last summer. So they've known for it way longer than I or most folks in the media have known about it. How does it impact him? If I'm being cynical about it, I know that, we reported to A2ZSports.com. He is off of a couple of teams' draft boards, at least that we know of, and that's sourced. I don't know whether or not he's off the Titans draft board. I don't think that he is. I do think that he's not a guy that they're considering it for. Now, that becomes a different question if they move back to 8 or 10 or 12. And that's why I'm not sure whether or not he's off their board, because if they move back, maybe he is the best player and they're willing to take that swing. But if you start to think about the Titans actually taking Bain at 8 or 10 or 12 or whatever it is, this is where it gets cynical, because we know where this organization is at right now. We know where they have been. We know that they are working really hard to, I don't want to say clean up their image, but, change the way that they're viewed in the public eye and rebrand and be this entity that people can wrap their arms around in the state of Tennessee. And I think that the actual incident might not be that big a deal to them internally, but they're no dummies, and they know what the PR is going to be for whichever team drafts him, right? Like, this is supposed to be the pinnacle of off-season hope, where every single team can strut out their first round pick to the introductory press conference, and you can say, hey, we got a game-changing player that everybody loves. We're going to put him on every cup, coaster, and barstool in the city. And this guy's going to be the face of the franchise for the summer because we're so excited to have this new elite player. And whoever drafts Ruben Bain, the reality is they're going to be behind the narrative 8-ball immediately. They're going to have a lot of awkward situations and questions to be answered. And that narrative is going to dominate the beginning of his career. And I just don't know if the Titans have the stomach to sign up for that.
Easton Freeze is with us from A to Z Sports. Easton, Trevor Maddich always uses the phrase game wrecker or game breaker, depending on which side of the ball we're talking here. How many of those players are in this draft by your count?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, the obvious first person on that list is Jeremiah Love because nobody has home run hitting ability like he does. True game wreckers. I mean, I think that David Bailey and Austin Reeves have the potential to become game wrecking defenders. So I'll lump them into that list. A quarterback that has top half of the league upside like Fernando Mendoza does, you have to include him. So there's 4. And then the list gets tricky because Sonny Styles is, I've talked to some people that have been scouting linebackers intently for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I've heard more than one of them say he's the best linebacker I've ever scouted, or he's the best linebacker I've scouted since Christian McCaffrey. That's how highly he is regarded by a lot of people. And so then you have to ask yourself, how game breaking can a middle linebacker be? If you're Fred Warner, Fred Warner is a game breaking player. So if he's Fred Warner, then he's a game breaking player. But am I certain he's going to be, the 100th percentile of his potential? Definitely not. So I'd say that there are 4 or 5, like no brainer can be a home run hitter guy in this draft. Now, every receiver in today's NFL can turn into that guy. But how do we find those guys in the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th, and 5th round? You get more diamonds in the rough in that way. So I'm sure there are a couple of those guys in there that we'll find, but you can't say that with certainty now.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a feel for how far you could trade down and still get a guy you feel like could be that much of an impact. And then the next level, of course,
my simple answer when you phrase it that way is if you trade down at all, like anywhere, I think that you are removing yourself from the tier of guys that is comfortably someone with game-breaking potential.
Okay, so you don't think you can slide down to 6 or 7 and feel good about it?
To me, it's a different tier of player, yes.
Okay, and then the next level would be how many true first-round grades do you have? Because I hear a lot of people saying it's not 32. 32 will be drafted in the first round, but they won't all have first-round grades. So how do you quantify that?
Yeah, and full disclosure, I don't do letter grades on guys, but I know which guys I would feel comfortable taking in the first and those that I wouldn't. And I've also talked to a lot of folks that do the grimy grading system like this, full-time scouting, and
right.
They have their number.
I guess the reason I'm asking is when you throw out the, hey, we'll give you 4, we'll give you 4 for 12 and 20. I think that's a huge part of that question, right? Is what could you get at 12 and 20?
It totally is. And the funny thing about true first round grades, a lot of people, myself included, are like, well, that's strange because have you ever heard of a single draft where like, man, we've got 45 first round grades? It's never ever the case. It's like there are only 23 first round grades in every single draft. Now, I do think this draft has less of them than the average draft. And what people mean when they say true first round grade is like a lot of teams have written out distinctions for what a first rounder is expected to be, what a second rounder is expected to be, right? And so a first rounder is expected to be a day one instant impact starter with superstar potential. And so if that's the rubric we're grading on, it's in the teens, right? It's like maybe 20 guys.
Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports has been our guest on D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick. Easton, thank you so much for your time. Excellent stuff as always. We'll probably catch up with you soon. Before or after the draft, we'll find out. But enjoy the draft if we don't talk to you before that.
I'll talk to you guys then. I look forward to it.
Yep.
615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction on what Easton had to say. But let's get back into the Predators. They were eliminated from playoff contention last night. Their loss to the Sharks plus the Kings win in Seattle eliminates the Predators from playoff contention. Willie and I were talking about this off air. I want to bring it on air. I'll tell you at the moment what my plan would be for next season. because I know all of you think of me as the blow it up guy, but I'm being realistic. And I'll tell you what I think they should do coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game.
Yeah, I mean, it was, it was a lot of meaningful games, and that's what you want, right? Like that's the games you want to play in, and that's why this hurts right now. It sucks because we put ourselves in position to play these games, and played really well the last couple of games here, and put ourselves in a spot to go all the way till the end to make the playoffs, and that's why this one is tough.
That was Roman Josi after the Predators lost 3-2 to the Sharks last night. Later in the evening, the Kings defeated the Kraken, eliminating the Predators from playoff contention. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. We'll continue to take your reaction to a question I asked earlier, 615-737-1025. How confident are you in the future of the team after this season? And there is the variable of the new GM. I understand that. But how confident are you in the future of the team after the season? 615-737-1025.
I noticed you're still steering the conversation away from the fact that you jinxed the Predators yesterday. And many of the texters want an explanation.
Big time
the Predators.
Big time jinx. Yeah, you did.
I just offered a fact. I offered a fact.
Which
but it was the way you
jinxed it.
Exactly.
You emphasized it. You went overboard with your emphasis.
It was almost like you did it on purpose.
Yes.
I should.
I agree with you, D-Mace. He did it on purpose.
I'm not saying he did it on purpose, but it sounded like that.
But it did sound like he did it on purpose.
He said they've beaten him 15 times
Hey,
in a row.
Guys, just so you know.
Willie,
so you know.
Willie is
and
exaggerating.
There's no such thing as a jinx. That was
no such thing at all.
I should
he
know.
said that.
I should know.
Did you say that, Adam?
Everybody
Adam,
knows
did you say that?
That's what he said.
Adam, did you say did those words come out of your mouth?
I did mention.
No.
Hold on. I did mention that the Predators had defeated the Sharks 15 consecutive times. I did mention that.
And did you say there's no such thing as jinx?
Who's to say?
He did.
Who's to say?
We can check the tape if you need.
All I will say is that last night was the Predators' first loss to the Sharks since November 9th, 2019.
Yeah.
That was before I was married and had 2 children.
Back on Celebrini was 12.
Let's move. Let's move to what I would do, because again, the new GM has some big decisions to make. And here is what I would do. And as I said before the break, I know all of you know me as the blow it up guy, but I'm also being realistic here. Realistically, the Predators can't blow it up because of the contracts that they signed. Many of their top players have no movement clauses in their contracts. So Philip Forsberg, Steven Stamkos, Roman Josi, Brady Shea, UC Soros, so on and so forth. If they want to be here, they're going to be here. So I am trying to be realistic. So here is what I would do if I were the new GM. And I think this could accomplish my goal. But here is what I would do. Any veteran player I can get rid of, I do. So, for example, the notable UFAs that the Predators have on their roster are Eric Haula and Tyson Jost. See ya. Justin Barron is a restricted free agent. I would not qualify Justin Barron. See ya. I mentioned all of the players with no movement clauses. One of those players, Jonathan Marchessault, I would attempt to move. I think both sides would benefit from going their separate ways. Marchessault hasn't been a real fit here. I would move on from him. So any veterans I can remove from the roster, realistically, I would. And I would consider a Marchessault trade realistic. So any veteran I can move away from, I do. And I fill all of those spots with kids. As I've said, Willie, play the kids.
So you would not look at any veterans that might be an upgrade over some of the veterans you're moving on from?
I won't rule out
in a free agent situation.
I haven't looked at the free agent class. From what I understand, it isn't great.
No, it's not going to be great, I don't think.
Right. So I would I would fill all of those holes with kids. The Predators had been playing the kids.
They played a lot of the kids.
Yes.
And so I would ask you, what kids are you thinking?
So
because who's not there? There's a couple of guys.
It is a good question.
There's a couple of guys that I think are obvious in there, but I don't think they have 5 or 6 that are ready to jump in there.
So,
and then if you get that many, then your whole team is going to be rookies or second-year guys. I'm not sure you can win with that.
I think Scott Wheeler said last week that, hey, there are some of those prospects in your highly ranked prospect system who you need to find out if they can be useful NHL players. I'll give you an example. Fedor Svechkov. Fedor Svechkov just turned 23. He's played more than 100 games in the NHL. He's got 34 points in those 120-plus games. I want to see if Fedor Svechkov is a player who can be a useful player for this team moving forward.
Well, aren't they? They're already doing that, right?
But, yes, but I would include more. So Tanner Molendyk, for example, David Edstrom, for example. I would fill the holes. I'm removing the veterans. And I would put kids in those spots to see if, hey, can these players be a part of the future? Because that is a major question for the new GM. Which young players will be meaningful parts of the future? So you've already got Matthew Wood and Joachim Kemmel, Reed Schaefer, Adam Wilsby, Ryan Ufko. I'd throw Molendyk in there. I'd throw Edstrom in there. You know, you can name some other ones, Willie. I don't want to draw a blank right now, but this is my point. I would fill as many spots as I can with the young players and let them sink or swim a little bit. And what might happen is they may sink, and the team, by extension, would sink, and then you get a top pick. But my goal next season would be finding out how many of these young players, the ones we've seen in Nashville this season and others we haven't really seen, I would try to find out how many of them can be useful role players, secondary players, whatever word you want to use. I would see how many of them I can build with as the new GM. And if the team struggles, then I get what I want, which is a top pick. But I would not go out and, like this past season when they brought back Eric Halla, they traded for Nick Hague, they signed Nick Perbix. I wouldn't do any of that this offseason.
Nick Hague is only 26.
I understand your point, but he had been in the league for a little while.
Right. So what's wrong with that, though? If he's 26 he's played 5 years in the league, I think they missed him when he got hurt there at the end of the year. I do think that he's a guy that could be a solid player for them for a good while. I think he's in a different category than Eric Halla, who's 34 or going to be 35 next year. That's two different things, right? A player that's in the mid-20s as opposed to the guy who's in the mid-30s.
Yes, I agree. Let me just verify something here. Nick Hague had played 364 games for the Golden Knights before joining the Predators. That's my point. Like
that's good.
Yeah,
right?
I'm not complaining about Hague specifically. What I mean is, I am not going out of my way this offseason to find players such as Nick Hague or Nick Perbix. I'm looking to fill those spots. I mean, I'm not going to rule out signing a free agent, but I am looking mostly to fill those spots with the prospects. And let's see which of those prospects can hit it, which prospects show promise, which prospects fall off. And if the team sinks as a result, I think it's a fact-finding mission. Let's put it that way.
Okay, let me throw this angle at you here, because I would contend that they sort of did that this year.
I would lean into it. I would lean into it more. You're right. They did do it after the deadline. I would lean into it more next season. But
I think there are guys that develop over the course of the season that maybe aren't ready at the beginning of the season. And even if they get off to a good start, sometimes they hit a wall. They might need a reset. Like even Matt Wood, who had a really good year. He is a big plus. Would you agree?
He showed flashes, definitely.
More than flashes. So like 17 goals at age 20, turning 21. That's notable.
But
even he had to get a trip back to the minors to get a reset. came back and made some big plays and emerged at center. Like, not every game was a gem.
Right. I'm not
but
sure.
I think that's a guy that was up and down a little bit. I think some of the prospects, as much as you want to say, play the kids, that may not be the best thing for every one of them. Some of them might need to play 20 games. They hit a wall. They need to go back, get some confidence, come back in. So that's where you need the Tyson Jose and some guys like that to fill. So roster flexibility, I agree with you, is probably something you would I think is what you're saying. Don't block any kids that you want to see have a pathway get in there. I think that would be a reasonable thing to say.
Let's go to Ryan on our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com. Ryan, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
What's going on, guys? How are y'all?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Me personally, I think I'm with Adam. A rebuild in this town would not hurt at all. I mean, me personally, I would trade the veteran guys and get younger, get more speed and agility. You know, that's the new hockey game is speed. And we lack speed when we play these opponents like the Sharks, the Lightning, the Panthers. They're just so much faster than us. And, I mean, you might think I'm crazy, but I would trade Forsberg for a blockbuster deal and get younger players that are more skilled. I would trade, you know, Brady Shea is so overrated. He's gotten progressively worse. And then I would trade Roman Yossi. You got to get younger. I mean, it's a young man's sport. It's not a veteran sport anymore.
Thank you for the call, Ryan. Now, if the Predators were to do that, then you're definitely rebuilding. Then you're definitely probably tanking if you're trading Philip Forsberg and Roman Yossi, or even one of them. But again, I hear what Ryan is saying. Thank you for the call, Ryan. I'm trying to be realistic. Like, I don't think it's realistic that Philip Forsberg is going to go to the new GM and say, get me out of here. Or Roman Yossi. I'm not
going to happen.
I'm not including that in my plan because it's unrealistic.
All right, so let's go specific at the center position, which is a really tough position to go out and get really good help. You're going to have to overpay to do it. They certainly have the salary cap space to go overpay for maybe a guy that's better than Eric Haula. Eric Haula, I thought, had a good year. Would you agree? I think when you look at Eric Haula's season, based on what you thought you were getting the day that they traded for him, Adam, I think there was a lot of complaining. Well, why would you want Eric Haula? I didn't think that they even traded him with the idea he would play every night at center. But if you told me over the summer when they traded for him, he's going to play basically every night at center and give you close to 40 points, I'd say, man, that's better than he had been in the year or two prior to that. I thought they got good mileage out of him. So I don't know if they have interest in bringing him back for one more year or not. But to me, if you're not having him, you're looking for somebody who's better. So, but you're saying play the kids. So tell me your four centers for next year. Like I think O'Reilly
would be the number one center.
Unless they trade him in the summer, and that's going to be talked about, I'm sure, right?
Yes, we will discuss that.
He's got 1 year left.
Let's assume that he's on the team right now.
Okay, so there's one spot.
Yes.
Matt Wood, Svechkov,
Edstrom, or Brady Martin if you think he's ready.
Okay, so those are two great ones there. Edstrom and Brady Martin, two high prospects. Martin being probably the number one prospect, but he's going to be the youngest. He's 19, and Edstrom will be, I think, 21 next year. Still very young. Didn't tear it up this year in the AHL, but he's a bigger guy.
Edstrom is 21.
He's just turned 21. Okay, so would you not maybe prefer to have a veteran placeholder in there in the mix to help? That's awfully young. Like to think all those guys are going to play every game. That's why Haula was valuable on this team, is that he was a support. So maybe you have a Haula type of guy that can move over to play wing if Edstrom and Brady Martin are ready. To me, these are the decisions that I'm looking at. And you're asking yourself, okay, what kind of team am I having? Does that give me enough to get back to the playoffs? Or am I just going to say, play the kids even if they're floundering and drowning because we're going to lose? And that will get me maybe a number one center with a high first-round pick. These are the tough calls.
But so what names would sort of fill that void? You're saying, well, we need to make a trade, or we need to go out and get. If we
Yeah.
don't retain Holla, we need to go out and get someone with Holla like ability, or even better.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, who is out there? Who do you
people
trade for?
People aren't going to be really excited to trade you a good center without it costing you, because there's probably a few teams that have a surplus of centers, but not very many. So this is again where a deep prospect pool can help you, and all the picks they have. So let's throw you a second, let's throw you a third, and throw in this prospect, and then maybe that gets me something that's a little bit better and younger than an Eric Holla, for example.
My ultimate aim here, if I'm the new GM and I'm enacting this plan, it's me, Adam, being the new GM. My plan would be, all right, I'm going to put as many of the young prospects in my highly ranked pool in the NHL as I can. Let's see which ones sink. Let's see which ones float. You've got the veteran core still, because again, I'm being realistic. I assume you still have O'Reilly and Stamkos and Forsberg and Yossi and Shea and all of those players. You see who sinks or floats? It's a fact-finding mission. You may find out, hey, Fedor Svechkov, for example, he may not have a future here in Nashville, but you learn that. I'm just picking Svechkov off the top of my head.
He's a guy that, to me, could go in any number of directions, and they signed him for a very economical price, right? It's not going to cost you a whole lot.
So you find out about other players, and if the team struggles, you may put yourself in position to draft that superstar prospect that is missing from your highly touted pool. So that would be my plan. 615-737-1025. Am I nuts? Let me know. 615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction. We'll wrap up the show next. We'll get back into the breaking news that happened right when we came on the air as well. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game.
D-Mace, Vingan and Donick, 102.5 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. JD from Nashville says, you're spot on, Adam. I've promoted you to GM. Let's do this. I mean, I could move up a couple of tax brackets. I wouldn't mind that. I don't think I'm qualified for the job, however. A lot of great discussion today on the Predators. We'll continue to talk about the Predators offseason in the coming days and weeks. Of course, the big news we're waiting for, who will replace Barry Trotz as GM, because that will have a major influence in all of this. But the other breaking news in the world of sports, which broke right before we came on the air, the story that has captivated the sports world, Diana Russini and Mike Vrabel. Right before we came on the air, the Associated Press reported that Diana Russini has resigned from The Athletic. Russini has since made this announcement herself, posting her resignation letter on X. Here is part of what that letter said. Quote, I have covered the NFL with professionalism and dedication throughout my career, and I stand behind every story I have ever published. When the Page 6 item first appeared, The Athletic supported me unequivocally, expressed confidence in my work and pride in my journalism. For that, I am grateful. In the days that followed, unfortunately, commentators and various media have engaged in self-feeding speculation that is simply unmoored from the facts. That's a good word.
Unmoored.
Unmoored. Moreover, this media frenzy is hurtling forward without regard for the review process The Athletic is trying to complete. It continues to escalate, fueled by repeated leaks, and I have no interest in submitting to a public inquiry that has already caused far more damage than I am willing to accept. Rather than allowing this to continue, I have decided to step aside now before my current contract expires on June 30th. I do so not because I accept the narrative that has been constructed around this episode, but because I refuse to lend it further oxygen or to let it define me or my career, end quote.
That last part I find to be the key. That's what struck me about it, is she appears to be in that statement. Look, I don't pretend to know what it's like in her household, her world, her family, and what her inner circle is telling her. But it would seem to me that if she is sticking to her story, which that statement would indicate that she is, that, hey, the facts are that I've stayed professional, I stand by my stories, etc., that the nature of this story, I don't know that you could really avoid the firestorm, the yo-yos on social media who don't know one way or the other what happened or what didn't happen. They see a picture and they're going to jump to conclusions. Even members of the media, some have more restraint than others. There are there are certain types of people that you will see on social media that really don't care one way or the other if they're right or not. They're just going to fuel the speculation, go wild. I feel like she's referring to those types in that. But I think she knows as well as anybody, you can't avoid that, right? That's going to happen whether you resign or stick it out. So for her to resign, her goal has got to be to get back into this game somewhere, right? Is that the best pathway, or would she have been better off just sticking to it, taking the heat, and continuing to push forward her version of the truth and say, look, I'll have to take it, but I feel like I've stayed professional in this. If that's her story, it saddens me that she turned in the resignation to stop it.
Yeah, and it's not going to stop. I think it is going to fuel even more. And again, I look at that part as I'm the victim here, so I got to step away because y'all are infringing on my privacy. No, we're not. Your privacy somehow, some way got put in our face, and it seems like it was done on purpose. And again, I'm with you. If you didn't do anything, then why are you walking away from your job with 2 or 3 months left? Why? Because you don't want nobody to. They're going to talk about you anyway. There's going to be stories about you anyway. If I didn't do anything, I'm standing firm in my truth, and I'm keeping my job. And y'all going to say what y'all going to say anyway. So I'm going to keep my job. This sounds like, to me, that there was an ultimatum that either you leave or we're done. That's what it seems like to me, because nobody on that athletic side said we wanted her to leave. They didn't put out a we are severing the relationship between Diana and us as a company. They didn't come out with that. She did. Again, which tells me that somebody said in that house, and I would be surprised if she's in it like she has been as far as the sport. I would be surprised if there was something going on. If there were, because we don't know, it was just pictures out there. But if there was something going on, I would be surprised if her significant other says, "Oh, you can go back in that world again." I would be surprised.
Well, she said public inquiry, right? So she's concerned, I'm sure, that there'll be other little things that are.
But whether you're in it or not, they're going to say what they're going to say regardless.
Yeah, I think that's the dilemma, right? And only she knows
Exactly.
what happened.
Well,
Vrabel.
Vrabel.
And Vrabel, right?
Yes.
And that Vrabel's another part of this. I do think that Vrabel, his just blow off in his statement, which was basically, hey, this is nothing. It doesn't deserve our time. These are two friends hanging out. That's going to be tested now. Now that she's resigned, he should have to answer some more questions too, right?
Yeah.
We know how that's probably going to unfold. But for her, I do. Only she knows what actually could come out, because she knows the truth.
Exactly.
Chris on our text line says, pictures don't lie. Keywords are, I'm not going to let a public inquiry continue the issue. So she's walking away before the real truth comes out. Joey says, they got caught. Who's going to admit to adultery in public?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like she walked away because she thinks that the longer she stays, more stuff will start to come out.
Right. But that's why they made the decision, both of them, to say that these pictures don't mean anything.
Exactly.
That was their story.
So
when you do that, I mean, if that's your truth, then stick by it.
Stand in
But
it.
if that's not the truth, then we got a whole nother
The
discussion.
Athletic also did itself no favors by coming out forcibly defending
And that's the first thing that she said
immediately. And then it was like, oh, we're going to review your stories and make sure that everything is kosher. Maybe do the investigation first before coming out and saying something. I don't think that went over well inside the Athletic, but
and where the friends, right there?
Where are the friends? Where are the friends?
Because that was part of the story.
Exactly.
We were there with friends.
Where the friends at?
I'm trying to keep my job. Friends, where you at?
You would think they would TMZ, like, give me the friends. Give me the pictures of the friends where we hiking. You need
Were
that.
we all in the pool together? What were we doing?
That would make it look a lot better.
Would it be better if
make
they
it
showed Joey? There's a picture of Joey with all of them from Joy from Friends.
As Eli from Smyrna says, I mean, who doesn't hold hands with their bros in front of beautiful mountains? I mean,
I definitely do.
Derek may have done that this weekend when he was hiking the mountains. Who's to say? But that'll do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow at 3:00. We'll get back into the NFL draft. We'll continue the fallout from the Predators playoff elimination as well. But Predators fans, coming up next, the final edition of Smashville Live this season, live from Brewhouse South in Cool Springs. Our guy, Max High Maintenance Hers, is standing by, along with Fedor Svechkov and Joachim Kemmel. Enjoy. We will talk to you tomorrow at 3:00.
He's the same guy that didn't know what.
Max didn't know what Fantasy Island is. The Blaine.
Yeah, he didn't know.
I didn't know about that either.
Come on, Tattoo.
Come on,
Tattoo.
High maintenance.
Come on, high maintenance.
Well, as always, I love you. The team loves you. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.
You almost forgot your lines.
Yeah, I almost forgot my lines right there. I've been gone too long. 2 days too long. No, but I love you. The team love you. Hey, don't you forget, you hear the song. Don't you forget about us, because we will not forget about you. See you tomorrow here, 3 p.m. on 102.5 The Game. Peace. The plane.